The night I found my wife's location pinned to a romantic Airbnb in Miami. I didn't say a word. I just booked a flight, and 8 hours later I was standing on a sidewalk, watching her laugh into another man's chest before she even knew I was there. I'm Marcus Kendall, 38, a structural engineer from Charlotte, North Carolina. I spend my career calculating exactly how much weight something can bear before it collapses. I never thought I'd need that skill for my own marriage. This is the story of how I found out. That Friday, my wife, Bianca, told me she was spending the weekend in Miami with her girlfriends. She showed me the group chat. She kissed me goodbye. What she didn't know was that I'd already found her location pinned to a private Airbnb listed as a romantic retreat, sleeping too. She had no idea I was already on a flight behind her. But let me back up. 6 weeks earlier, I'd come home early from a job site and heard Bianca on the phone in the living room. Her voice low and careful in a way that wasn't quite whispering, the kind of careful reserved for one person only. By the time I walked in, the call had ended and she was sitting with a book like nothing had happened. I noted it. I said nothing. Since then, there'd been late evenings explained away as client events, a warmth toward me that felt performed rather than felt, and a new habit of taking her phone into the bathroom. The Friday she packed for Miami, I watched her fold clothes into a suitcase with a bright, easy smile. "What hotel?" I asked. "We're doing an Airbnb." "More space, more fun," she said, moving through the room. "I'll send you the address." She held her phone toward me, a group chat visible but angled just enough that I'd have had to lean in to actually read it. "See, the whole crew. Sounds fun," I said. I kissed her cheek. She smelled like a perfume I didn't recognize. After she left, I sat alone at the kitchen table with a glass of water and let the silence tell me what I already suspected. I opened our old shared cloud folder, something we'd set up years back for tax documents, with a location-sharing feature we'd turned on during a road trip and never turned off. I'd assumed she had. She hadn't. The pin dropped in Wynwood, Miami. I searched the address. A private Airbnb came up immediately, a king bed, a candle-lit balcony, sleeping capacity 2, the word intimate used 3 times in the listing. I booked a flight for the next morning. I called my uncle Desmond, a man who'd spent 40 years in city contract work and understood that calls before 6 a.m. were never about nothing. "I need you to run a property check," I told him. "Wynwood, Miami, I'll text you the address." A long pause. "Is this about Bianca?" I didn't answer. He didn't need me to. "I'll make some calls," he said. Miami hit me with thick, heavy heat the moment I landed. I picked up a plain gray rental car and drove to the address. A stucco building the color of pale sand, bougainvillea climbing a wrought iron fence. I parked around the corner and found a spot on the open sidewalk with a clean sightline to the front door. Nothing about me announced itself. I just waited. At 7:42 that evening, the door opened. Bianca stepped out first, in a red dress I'd never seen, hair down, laughing before she'd even cleared the threshold, genuinely happy in a way that was both beautiful and devastating to witness. Behind her came a tall man in a cream linen blazer, silver at his temples, the kind of man who'd never once been told no. His name, I'd later learn, was Trent Ashworth. He put his hand on her waist, pulled her in, and murmured something against her ear. She closed her eyes, sighed, and turned her face into his chest. I was standing 8 feet behind them on an open sidewalk. I hadn't moved. I hadn't made a sound. Bianca opened her eyes and found me immediately, like she was looking for something that was always there. The happiness left her face all at once. Trent turned. He saw me. I looked at him for maybe 4 seconds, steady, complete, the way I look at a structural report when I already know where the failure is. Then I turned to Bianca. "You said you were with the girls." That was all, 3 words quiet as a door closing. "Marcus," she said, her voice scrambling for footing, I can explain. You followed me. Do you understand how that looks? I didn't answer. I didn't move. Trent cleared his throat, taking a small, reflexive step of distance. I think we should all just take a moment here. This is clearly. I looked at him until his sentence ran out of road and didn't come back. I'm not going to make a scene in the street, I told Bianca. That's not who I am, and you know it. I watched something collapse behind her eyes. When your weekend is finished, come home. We have things to discuss. I've already spoken to an attorney. I turned and walked back to my car. I drove to my hotel without rushing, sat on the edge of the bed in the dark, and let myself feel the full weight of what I'd just seen. The way you stand inside a broken structure before deciding how to fix it. An hour later, I called Desmond. It's confirmed, I said. Now I need everything. Bianca's car was in the driveway when I got home 2 days later. She changed into something plain, no makeup, hair pulled back, the deliberate wardrobe of someone performing remorse. Marcus, I'm so glad you're home, she said, voice breaking on cue. I sat across from her, not beside her, and let her talk. It started 3 months ago, she said. A professional relationship that got complicated. She was confused. She never meant to hurt me. She still loved me. I need time to process, I told her. That was all. But what happened next completely changed everything I thought I understood about what she'd actually done. 3 days later, Desmond called with the property records. Trent Ashworth, he said, runs Ashworth Capital Group. He's been running payments through Bianca's event planning business for 14 months, 43 transfers, north of $200,000. He paused. Several of those transfers don't match anything on her booking calendar. No vendors, no venues, no staffing. The money moved. The events never happened. There was more. Desmond had gotten into some of Trent's email correspondence through a contact. In the second month of the affair, Trent had referenced me by name, my profession, everything. He'd known exactly whose marriage he was stepping into. This wasn't a man who got in over his head, Desmond said. This was a calculation. I brought in a forensic accountant named Priya, a sharp, no-nonsense colleague of Desmond's, who spent 40 minutes going through everything at my kitchen table while Bianca was out at a client dinner. When she finished, she took off her glasses and looked at me. She was positioning herself to leave you, Marcus, Priya said. This wasn't confusion. This was a financial exit. I called a divorce attorney, a woman named Diane Voss, first thing the next morning, before Bianca was even awake. Her office sat on the 14th floor downtown, glass walls, a view that made the world look organized. I laid out everything, the transfers, the calendar gaps, the emails proving Trent knew about me from the start. This is a good start, Voss said. We'll need the full financial record. If we can show intentional asset repositioning, that changes the entire shape of the settlement. Then she added, don't change your behavior at home, don't move money. Give her nothing to react to. For 2 weeks I lived a strange double life, coming home, eating dinner across from Bianca, listening to her stories, building a private timeline of evidence at night in the spare room. I photographed every document. I cross-referenced every transfer against her booking calendar. The gaps weren't subtle. They were wide open, money going in with nothing on the other side of the ledger except it quietly moving somewhere else. Bianca, meanwhile, relaxed. She stopped tensing when I walked into rooms. She started touching my arm again. She even called Trent. Desmond told me the call lasted 11 minutes. I logged it and kept working. Then, one Sunday, my mother called. Marcus, she said carefully, I was over earlier, and I noticed the china cabinet looks emptier than usual. Did y'all move something? I walked through the house room by room, the way I'd walk a building after a reported failure. The good china was gone. A large painting I'd bought years ago from a gallery in Savannah was gone, leaving only a lighter rectangle on the wall. And in the back of my closet, The fireproof lockbox I told Bianca held old tax records, the one holding my late father's documents. The deed to a small piece of land in rural Georgia he'd spent decades saving for was unlocked and empty. I sat in my car in the driveway for a long moment before calling my mother back to tell her everything. When I got to my father's papers, my voice cracked once, just once. Then it steadied. If I had known how far Bianca was willing to go, I would have moved even faster than I did. I called Voss the next morning. "Don't confront her," she said. "Don't go near wherever it ends up alone. We document the recovery the same way we document everything, witnessed, itemized, time-stamped. Can you get a police presence? Just a courtesy call, an officer as a witness." Desmond made one call. By that afternoon, an off-duty officer agreed to meet me at a storage facility Bianca had rented under her mother's name, as county records later confirmed the very next day at noon. Unit 14C. Inside, 2 boxes of china, the painting wrapped in moving blankets, and an accordion folder holding my father's deed, his survey maps, and the letter he'd written in his careful, deliberate handwriting to accompany his will. I didn't read the letter. I already knew what it said. I confirmed it was there, closed the folder, and inventoried everything with the officer as a witness. By 3 that afternoon, I'd moved my clearly premarital and personal assets into a separate account, fully documented and cleared by my attorney. That evening, Bianca had made dinner my favorite lemon herb chicken, candles lit. She brought up couples counseling, reached across the table and put her hand over mine. "Send me the information," I said. "I'll take a look." I was buying time. I already knew where this was going. The following Saturday, I called a family meeting at the house. My uncle Desmond arrived first, quiet, in a dark button-down. My mother came 10 minutes later and sat beside him without a word. At 1:55, I called Voss and put her on speaker, disclosed to the room as counsel. Bianca walked in at 2 o'clock in a cream blouse, dressed for a reconciliation. She stopped at the edge of the dining room when she saw the gathered faces and the phone on the table. "Sit down, Bianca," I said. I laid it all out, one document at a time. 43 wire transfers, 6 that occurred during weeks with no events booked. The storage unit registered under her mother's name. The itemized inventory, my grandmother's china, my painting, my father's documents, all recovered. The financial analysis, each irregular transfer flagged and dated. The contact logs, 14 months, not 3. And finally, the email where Trent referenced me by name from month 2, proving he'd known about me from the very beginning. "This was never something that happened to you," I told her. "It was something you built." Her composure cracked like old plaster, first a line, then a section falling away. She turned to my mother, eyes brimming. "You know me, you know how much I—" "Don't speak to me right now," my mother said, 7 words flat and final. Bianca turned back to me. "The divorce petition was filed this morning," I said. "The transfers have been flagged for fraud review. If you contest anything related to my father's land, I will pursue it as theft. My attorney handles everything from here." The room went quiet in the way rooms do when something permanent has just been said out loud. Bianca hired her own attorney within the week, a sharp negotiator who read through my documentation and told her plainly, "If we challenge this, we lose. Your negotiating position is significantly weaker than it should be." She'd walked in expecting him to find a crack in my case. There wasn't one. Trent's company received a subpoena for its business records. To Bianca's surprise, his lawyers cooperated fully and fast, producing records that drew a clean, careful line around his own exposure and made it obvious exactly what she'd received and why. He never called her, not once. He'd simply calculated his liability and cut her loose. That subpoena became public record, which is how a business journalist named Devin Marsh picked up the thread. He'd already been watching Trent's firm after a regulatory inquiry months earlier, and the divorce filing gave him what he needed. The story ran, factual, unembellished, and within 2 weeks, investor withdrawal letters started arriving at Trent's office. A development partnership he'd spent 18 months building quietly died. Senior associates started leaving the firm. Doors that used to open for him started staying shut. I didn't do any of that to him. He did that to himself. I'd simply stopped protecting him from the weight of his own decisions. A few weeks later, Bianca called and asked to meet, no attorneys, just the two of us. We sat in a quiet coffee shop. She looked tired in a way sleep doesn't fix. "The company's been ordered liquidated," she said. "I'm looking at an apartment. It's fine. It'll be fine." A pause. "He never called me, Trent." Not once. Her voice didn't break on it. She'd already buried that part. "I made choices," she said finally. "I'm going to spend the rest of my life with what I did to you. I'm not asking you to feel sorry for me. I'm asking if there's any version of this where you can forgive me." I looked at her for a long moment. "I don't wish you harm," I said. "That's true. But I don't have anything left for you, Bianca. I gave you everything I had and you used it to build a door out." I paused. "I can't forgive that right now. Maybe I won't ever. But I'm going to be fine." She nodded slowly, the way you nod when you already know the truth and there's nothing left to argue with. I stood, rested my hand on the table near hers for a brief moment, and walked out into the afternoon light. I didn't look back. 14 months later, I was driving a stretch of Georgia highway with the windows down, my dog Copper shifting around in the back seat. I'd relocated 8 months earlier, not running from anything, just moving towards something that finally made sense. Closer to my mother, closer to my father's land, closer to the work I'd put off for a decade because my marriage always seemed to come first. I was building something now, an affordable housing project in a neighborhood that had been promised investment for 30 years and never gotten it. My name was on the plans. I loved it in a way I hadn't loved a project in years. I cooked real meals on Sundays. I had dinner with Desmond once a month on my back porch. I visited my mother every week. There was a woman named Talia, a landscape architect, quiet and funny in a way that snuck up on you, nothing rushed, just warmth returning slowly, the way it does when you let it. Bianca was in Atlanta, I'd heard secondhand. Her company was gone. I felt genuinely very little about it, not satisfaction, not grief, just distance. Trent was still in Miami, still running his firm, though it carried less weight than it used to, and the rooms that used to open for him had mostly stopped opening. I hadn't caused that directly. I just stopped shielding him from what he'd built for himself. Neither of them lived in my thinking anymore. There was too much in front of me that actually mattered. I pulled my truck onto the red clay shoulder at the edge of my father's land, cut the engine, and walked to the tree line as the light went gold, then orange, then almost red. I took the deed out of my jacket pocket, unfolded it along its worn creases, and looked at my father's signature, faded, but every letter still there. I folded it back up, put it in my pocket, and stood there a long while listening to the quiet. Then I turned back toward my truck. I already had plans. "So tell me, if you found out the same way I did, standing on that sidewalk, what would you have done in the moment? Would you have confronted them right there, or walked away like I did? Let me know in the comments, and tell me where in the world you're watching from. If this story meant something to you, please hit like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.